Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast. Today, we have an interesting conversation about one of my favorite topics, which is bowel movements, constipation, lack of poop, however you want to describe it. And our guest today is Jacqui Justice. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Talk about this
Just the topic.
fascinating.
It
Yes,
is. We all
just the
need to know
topic.
about it, though. We all need to know. It's not commonly talked about, but
But so
something we
many
all
women.
wonder. We are all
Oh,
curious. Yes.
And I guess
guys,
that's where I
we-
would start. Like, I don't think, obviously, like Bridget said, we don't talk about it enough, but there are a lot of women in midlife struggling with a slow digestive system.
yeah,
Is that a
or the
nice way to put it?
opposite.
Or a very fast one. Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I work mostly with women in midlife. And aside from the struggles with excuse me, stubborn hormonal weight gain, these are the next two issues that I deal with the most. And I can't remember a questionnaire that I looked at that didn't have one or the other. So whether they had it, for their whole lives, they've had a struggle or just started in midlife with the hormonal fluctuations, it's so common. And IBS is like the most common digestive issue there is. So,
Can
we
you
talk,
define that just so
Yeah.
before we go forward? Could you define IBS? We're going to talk about IBS and we're going to talk about gastritis, but could you define them both?
right. Okay. So IBS years ago, it was used as an umbrella term for almost any digestive issue a person had. But now it has its own diagnosis code, and we know that there's four different types. It's IBS, C, constipation, D, diarrhea. But the most common would be the mixed, and then there's one that's just we don't know what it's about. So yeah, it's basically going to affect your lower GI tract, where gastritis is the opposite and affects your upper GI tract. IBS is all about the lower GI tract, and it's got so many multiple, issues that can cause it. And stress is a big one. It's a really big one. I think, besides from the hormonal fluctuations in menopause, I think that the stress that so many people, so many women are feeling in the menopausal years is another reason why we see so much of it. But basically, it's going to affect like what we call the gut brain axis and the vagus nerve, which is like the main highway between the brain and the gut. And that's actually why the gut is called the second brain. And so these movements along this sort of axis cause little nerves to be fired or not fired. And then the end result is this IBS-like symptom. That's one of the biggest factors that cause it. And then we have gut dysbiosis, which I see as the most common. That's the thing I see mostly in my practice, paired with anxiety.
What
And
is, I'm sorry. I'm
no, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to ask, what could you explain what you said gut
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 dysbiosis.
dysbiosis.
Yeah.
So gut dysbiosis is the imbalance of good and bad bacteria in the intestinal tract. We naturally should have a balance of the good bacteria or commensal bacteria and the bad bacteria. And they live very symbiotically together, happy, happy, until something triggers the bad bacteria to overgrow. And that can be antibiotics. I mean, I lived with IBS for 10 years before I figured out how to fix it. And mine was basically caused by overuse of antibiotics in my teenage years. And that can just, aside from getting rid of the bad bacteria, it just like crushes your good bacteria. And you need that good bacteria for like the gazillion different jobs it does, but basically to keep your gut healthy. And when that balance is off, you're going to feel it. And IBS is one of the most common symptoms you're going to feel from that. And whether it's the constipation side of it, the diarrhea side of it, or most commonly the mixed side, that's what's going to happen. I've never had a client that had dysbiosis, and most of my clients do, that didn't experience one of those types. And so the good news is we can test for that. And using some real cutting edge gut health testing, basically a stool sample. No, it's gross, but it does the job. And it really takes a good look into your intestines, into your digestive system, into your good and bad bacteria, plus all the other guys like pathogens and parasites and viruses and yucky things like that. And it gives us the information that we need so that we can fix it. So are you missing specific probiotics, the good guys? Oh yeah, you're missing this particular one. Let's replace it. Oftentimes you can get amazing relief just by that.
Yeah. Do you find that women that they've suffered for this maybe a lot of their lives, or it's something that just happens? Like you said, an antibiotic could be the cause of it, or does it come on more later in life?
I see it definitely coming on more later in life. And I think it's because of the hormonal fluctuations and the increase in stress. But I do have clients and have had them over the years that have said like they've struggled with constipation from day one. I haven't had clients that have said they've struggled with diarrhea from day one because
Yeah.
that was a much more serious issue. Someone that has like diarrhea on a daily basis,
Oh,
that's,
wow.
that's
It's
going to
got
the
to be
hospital.
horrible.
That would,
Yeah.
yeah, you would be dehydrated,
Yes.
just everything,
Right.
malnourishment, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking about malnourishment, IBS, because it also can irritate the gut lining, you can end up with leaky gut. You end up with a boatload of food sensitivities, which further exacerbate the issue and the inflammation. Um, you really want to probably cut out the most common foods that irritate the gut. And no surprise, gluten and dairy are at the top of the list. I've had clients that just from cutting those out have had like complete relief. So it's, everybody's different. And honestly, you really have to customize your treatment in this situation because, your IBS is different than my IBS, different than her IBS, and there's different causative factors, there's different triggers. So it's really good to do this gut testing. It's my favorite thing to do, as weird as that sounds, because you really do get to find out things that you would never know otherwise. It's like looking at someone's blood chemistry. You can't tell what's wrong with them outside of their body, but when you look at their blood chemistry, you see all kinds of things. And, my motto is always test, don't guess. It used to not be, but then over the years, no one wants to fool around with these kind of things and try a million different things and waste their time and their money. They really want to get to the root of their causes and get done with it.
So you
So,
talk about testing, not guessing. What is out there to test? Like what type of tests are available for people who are struggling with the different forms of IBS?
okay, so the best thing would be a comprehensive digestive stool analysis. The one I use is called the GI map test. There are others. It basically requires a little stool sample, takes 2 seconds, you send it into the lab, and they do this really in-depth analysis of it. That would be my first choice and probably my only choice. Yeah.
Is that something that can be done? It's somebody that doesn't live near you. Is it something that could be mailed in,
Oh
or is
yeah.
it can be?
Oh, it's a
Okay.
totally at home test.
Okay.
You just the test gets drop shipped. You
Mhm.
get it, you do it in the privacy of your own home, and you send it back in a prepaid mailer.
And she
It's
said ship ending at
Yes,
yeah, I
I
didn't
just
say
I
that
just
other
thought
word.
of
I did
that
not say.
I was like, she said it
might
ends with the
edit that a
puh
little
sound.
bit.
But anyway, it takes the analysis takes like 2 to 3 weeks, so it's
Okay.
pretty in depth.
Mhm.
What are the most common results you see with people struggling with IBS? Like what is normally out of whack in those tests?
Usually some form of dysbiosis. They're usually low in really important gut bacteria. And they're really usually high in inflammatory gut bacteria. I usually see that. And I also see low digestive enzymes. So it's not that there's something wrong with their pancreas. It's as we age, it's, just like everything else. Our digestive enzymes start declining. And so now we can't, digest our foods as well as we used to. And then we're not breaking down our food as well as we used to. It's not getting absorbed as well as it used to. And that can be another factor for that leaky gut that I spoke about. But those are the two things. And often, honestly, by correcting that bacteria balance, that dysbiosis, and by giving someone the digestive enzymes that they're low in, amazing changes. And that's why I do not agree that IBS is chronic for everyone. Maybe for some people, but I don't, because I think that we just haven't looked deep enough into the causes and what's going on and what we could fix. So, I just want to say this test, not this particular test, but one similar to it. I just found out through a client of mine, because most of this functional testing is out of pocket. But once you hit the wonderful age of 65 and you're on Medicare, some Medicare plans will cover that testing once a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It is good to know because they're not
Yeah.
cheap. And
No.
it's, and it's just, I think that I was so like excited to hear that because, it's a very helpful test. And, it's just not enough people know about it and suffer needlessly when they can really get to the root cause.
Yeah, and I was going to say is the root of so many issues. Your
Wow.
digestive issues are just the root of it. And you were talking about trigger foods, and you were talking about gluten, of course, and
Yeah.
dairy being number two. Are there common foods in particular in that area that you see most commonly with women or
Yeah,
people?
you know what?
Yeah.
And I think, too much alcohol will affect one person with IBS and not another. So that's kind of tricky, but coffee.
Coffee. Yes. I'm going to sign up for the coffee one.
Yeah.
Yes.
She is so good. She does not drink coffee at all. I'm so proud of her.
It's 20
It's
years
amazing.
now that I have not had coffee and I miss it. When I smell it, I want to go over the table at Bridget and say, give me a coffee.
I know it's cruel of me actually to drink it in front of you.
It is.
But
No, it's not.
she is so, I mean, I've never seen her drink coffee. I met her
And
about
I
8
used
or
to
9 years ago.
love it.
I've
Well,
never seen her drink coffee. So
fix
she's
your
really
gut
good.
and you
Yeah.
may be able to once again. You know what? Have you ever tried any of those? And I know it's not the same, and it's an acquired taste, but you can get used to it.
The
Those
mushroom
mushrooms.
ones. Everyone tells me to try those. I don't like mushrooms. And I'm like, if I don't like mushrooms, how am I going to like
No,
mushroom
they
coffee?
don't taste like mushrooms. You would never know. It's not the mushrooms we normally eat. These are like medicinal mushrooms that we normally don't.
Okay.
And they have a lot of benefits. They really, I have to say, we drink coffee because, we love it but also because it gives us, a boost and also a focus. Mushroom coffee, much better.
Really? I've heard
Much better.
mushroom hot chocolate is supposed to be pretty
Yeah,
good
that's good
too.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good too. And I'll try to think of the other thing that is a replacement for coffee, but coffee's coffee. So, but how about tea? Can you do tea?
I can drink tea, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Anything with a
rough.
coffee bean. Coffee ice cream was my favorite ice cream. Haven't been able to have that. Anything with the coffee bean for me is irritating.
Right.
You might just be sensitive to it. It definitely speeds up the digestive tract. That's why most people drink it in the morning so that they can, have their
That's Bridget raising her hand. I mean, it would make life a lot easier. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
just do a shot of it in the morning.
Right. Just get it
Woo,
done.
she'll be so energetic, man.
Be like, hello.
Oh
So-
my goodness.
Oh yeah, when you have not had coffee for a long time and then you have it, it's it's like you're on drugs.
She's already got a lot of energy, so that'll be a
Yeah.
little scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, if it works, if it makes the digestive system go through, I'm game as long as I'm not leaving the house for anything.
Let me just tell you about some of the other triggers, the FODMAP foods.
Right.
Yeah, you know about those.
Well, our
And
listeners might want to.
oh, okay, sorry.
Refresher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
okay.
okay.
I forgot about you guys. Sorry. So it stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And polyols are actually those alcohol sugars. Those are a real culprit. Like anything with an OL ending, xylitol,
Mannitol,
maltitol.
maltitol. Oh,
Whoa.
no.
That's like an explosion within your gut. That's awful. So those are bad. Um, Wheat, dairy, garlic, onions, fruits, especially with skins and also with pits, are usually a problem. Sometimes legumes. And, my IBS clients differ across the board. Some of them can eat salads and be great with them, and others, no, way too much roughage really bothers their GI tract. So that's where you have to kind of get customized with it.
Can you
Right.
explain the difference between alcohol, sugar, and sugar?
So sugar is just, it's from cane or beet or whatever. It's actually, just the sugar. And then the alcohol sugar is it's got the OL ending. It's what's called a polyol. And it's it's not that it's not natural. So like xylitol, I believe, is from the birch tree. And I guess they extract it with alcohol. I think that's the reason, but I can't swear to it. And just that whole alcohol, part of it is the part that irritates the gut. But I think that's the answer.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't hold me to it 100%, but
I was
it's
just
not,
curious when you were
yeah,
talking about it because I think people think all sugar is the same, and
no.
that's
So
not
there's
necessarily true.
Yeah, there's different sugars. There's then there's your artificial sugars. Those are the, Splenda and aspartame and all that junk. And then there's things like monk sugar, which that is a different form of sugar, but that is actually real sugar. It just has a lower glycemic effect. It doesn't raise your blood sugar as much. There's stevia, which is a natural herbal sweetener. But then the polyols are a class all themselves. And I think the difference is that there's the alcohol added to it,
Yeah.
which
When you get a package of those, make sure you're getting, if you get that, make sure it doesn't say sugar free because I've made that mistake.
you're exactly right.
I've
Yes.
made that mistake and you can't leave the house then.
Oh no.
You just can't. No.
Oh,
Really? See,
Oh
oh
these are
yeah.
things
God.
I don't even know about. I
I
don't.
made a
Oh.
mistake and I can't, I think it was like Werther's and I thought it was regular. And I was like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
And it was sugar free. And
Oh
I was like,
yeah.
oh
So it had all the
no.
alcohol, sugar in
Yeah,
it.
the sorbitol and all of that. And even though they say erythritol doesn't do that, I find that it does.
Yeah.
That's a common one that's used now. They often mix it with monk fruit or stevia to increase the sweetness, but I always find that doesn't work very well.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
and then the xylitol, you do not want animals. If
Oh,
that
no.
can kill
Oh,
animals.
such a
Yeah.
good point. Like
Oh,
this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what's in all of the sugar-free gum.
Right. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
the
You
So
things
have
good.
to
I'm
watch that.
learning.
Yeah. I do. I knew someone that their dog got into their gum. They lived. The dog
Oh,
lived,
Oh,
but it
the
was bad.
baby.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really bad.
who would think? I mean, that should
Mm-hmm.
be on the label big time, like bolded. But
Right.
sugar-free is always, you know, it's
It's
never
better.
No,
good.
It's
no.
really better to have the sugar. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it
don't
is.
really want to have either, but it is really better. I mean,
Right.
here I am telling the functional nutritionist that. Who
And
would
it is,
know that? Yeah.
just
Bridget's
like it's better to
educated.
have butter than it is to have like, margarine.
Right.
Right.
Same
Right.
thing. Same
Right.
thing. But let me say something about sugar. It is the like, first of all, it's the most inflammatory thing that we put in our body in the food category. And it really wreaks havoc on your digestive system because it's the food for that bad bacteria. And as soon as it gets a taste of it, they start proliferating. And it's like a smorgasbord. So if you've ever noticed like, oh, you ate dinner, you feel good, and then you're in the mood for a little dessert and you have it and all havoc, breaks loose.
Right.
It's because of that sugar.
Mm.
And that can even happen with fruit, honestly, for some people. Some people are very sensitive to the fructose in fruit.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people I know are wearing the glucose monitors.
Yes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I think it's really good, especially, if you've got high blood sugar, all of us going through the menopausal transition are trending towards insulin resistance. So we got to keep a handle on it. But some people, have already have like prediabetes. I see so much of that. And for people that don't even know they have it. And it's so great to have that tracking system.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's important, A1C. Sometimes I went recently to the doctor and asked to have my A1C checked, and they were like, well, that's not going to be covered by insurance. And I'm like, I'm 57. It should be
Stop
covered
it.
by insurance,
Ridiculous.
and they have to code it a certain way. But if people don't know to ask for these tests, they're not going to get the tests.
Exactly right. We can talk all day about that, that's one of my biggest like soapbox moments is for women getting the right blood work, especially in menopause, because you've got to have that. You always get a fasting glucose, but you need to have that fasting insulin, that hemoglobin A1C. There's a HOMA IR score that tells you of your risk for insulin resistance. Oh my God. I mean, there's so many things, besides that, even like a full thyroid panel, all the things that go wrong in menopause are what we need to test for so that
Right.
people could stop, suffering needlessly and get things fixed.
Right. And it seems like I'm going to go in next week, in fact, on Halloween to have my A1C
Good than the day
tested on
after
I
Halloween.
know, I
Right.
know, on
Right.
Halloween. But it is odd that, as people that don't have a medical background, that you're not even sure what to ask for. And you have to keep going back then. Like,
Mhm.
okay, this time you have to come back and get this done. And that could be, a whole another set of things.
I
But just like
know.
Colleen said, it may not be included in your insurance.
Right.
So you're making another
You need to
visit.
make a list. Listeners, make
Right.
a list of tests when you hear all these different episodes. Write
Yeah.
down the tests that you think would be applicable for you and see how creative your doctor can be with the coding. And I mean, that's the
Right.
Right.
reality. They'll
It
approve it
is.
if there's coding,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
It's
so
all about the coding.
I know,
Mhm.
which is so frustrating. So you talk about removing some things from your diet like wheat and dairy, what and coffee. What else besides removing those things from your diet? What good bacteria can you start eating to improve your gut?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so fermented vegetables, if your body can handle it. Now, with any digestive issue, you have to go slow with those things. Also with fiber, because it can actually irritate your digestive tract at the beginning. So you want to go slow with the, fermented vegetables, work up to them. You want to go slow with fiber, work up to it. But definitely those, you know, yogurt is great if you can handle dairy. If not, the plant-based yogurts work. Kefir, you can get that in, dairy or plant-based. Hard to find in plant-based, but you can get it. Um, you want to, kombucha is helpful for a lot of people, but not if you have SIBO. So everything's a little bit, you have to try it and see, but always go slowly with those kind of things. You want to include a lot of vegetables, but it might be better at first to do more cooked vegetables than raw and get your fiber that way. Beans are great for the fiber, but often cause problems with people with digestive issues. So those kind of things you want to tread slowly with. But, it would be great to take a probiotic. And Saccharomyces boulardii, that is a specific strain of probiotic, seems to be very helpful in people with IBS. But
Okay.
again, it's a good idea to kind of really get in there and look at what bacteria you're low in and what you really actually need.
So you said Saccharomyces. What was this?
Boulardii. So
Oh,
a common brand is Floristore. And besides being helpful for IBS, it also is the only probiotic that I know of that you can take with an antibiotic. So a lot of times pediatricians recommend it when kids go on antibiotics for ear infections. Because when you go on antibiotics, it's going to decrease, the bad bacteria, but also all the good bacteria. So taking that probiotic at the same time, maybe a different time during the day, but in the same day, will help keep that bacteria in your gut, the good bacteria.
In balance. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that sounds like a whole thing is trying to keep things balanced.
Exactly. You know
Yeah.
what? Isn't it always about balance? No matter what we're talking
right,
about,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's always about keeping it balanced. It's
it's
just
always about balance. And one of the things that you can work on is your vagal tone, because stress is such a huge part of IBS. And that vagus nerve, as we said, goes from the brainstem all the way down to the large intestine. And you want to keep that in good shape so it could do its job. And so just simple things like deep breathing, that diaphragmatic breathing can make a big difference in the vagal tone and really help with IBS symptoms. Um, what else is there? Like even like mind body practices like yoga, meditation are very helpful. Cold exposure, like even just splashing cold water on your face. You don't have to you
I
don't
was
have
like
to do one
cold
of those cold
plunge.
plunges. By the way, never gonna happen. Even though I know that they're so great, that's where I draw the line.
I don't like to be cold,
No,
so
I can't even, the thought of doing that is, but also even something as simple as laughter helps massage that whole area. And there are vagal massages you can do, and there's even like a medical device that helps. And also another probiotic called Lactobacillus rhamnosus is another probiotic besides the Flora store that you
where can people get these probiotics?
um
Any
online, they can look them up. I mean, I have an online store, but I have them under different names. It'd be hard to find them. Just know, the names of them: Lactobacillus rhamnosus and the Saccharomyces boulardii are the two. And then once you're, using those, and then you can move to a full spectrum probiotic that has like, a bunch of different strains. But I always, with that too, always start low. You don't want to shock your GI system with a whole bunch of bacteria at once.
right, going guardrail to guardrail. That's what my husband always says. Don't go guardrail to guardrail on me. And Colleen reminds me too, because I was like, I'm going to cut all this. Don't cut all this
Yeah.
out. You
Then you
don't know
won't know.
which one's
Yeah.
bothering you.
One, it's like babies when you start feeding them to
Right.
see if there's
Right.
an allergy, one thing at a. What about gastritis? Like, because we were going to talk about that as
Okay.
well.
So I just to end the other one, and it's good for gastritis too. And just because what you just said, I'm glad you brought that up. You want to journal. That is one of the most important things that you can do. Everybody hates doing it, but it is the most successful way for you to find out what's working and what's not working, what foods are working for you, what combination of foods. I mean, I remember when I was going through it, I was, keeping a real good food journal, and I realized that I could have chicken and I could have sweet potatoes, but I could not have them together. Isn't that weird?
That's
That's very
wild.
But
Yeah.
strange.
my digestive system wasn't strong enough to handle like proteins, the digestion of proteins and carbohydrates at the same time. It was that weak. So
Wow.
I
Yeah.
know it gets really tricky.
Yeah.
It's
You,
really tricky.
I noticed things that in the past that I could handle, and now I can't handle. Like I could eat onions. I used to, I mean, not that I would eat an onion, but I could, onions on things.
Yeah.
Fine. Now I cannot eat a lot of onions. And is that something common that people develop something, a
Yeah. I mean,
intolerance?
yeah, I mean, they are a little rough on the GI tract. They're part of a family called allium family. And when I do food sensitivity testing, I commonly see that, most of that family on it. So, I just think it's one of those things that we just
Right. I just didn't know if my body said enough of this, never again, like you've
You've
had your
reached
quota
your
for your
fill.
life. Yeah.
reached it. And it's too bad because they're so,
I
flavorful. They're
know.
so good for us.
I know. I know.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
gastritis, another common digestive condition, but this time affecting the upper GI tract. And it's inflammation. It often causes damage to the gut lining. This one you really have to catch early because where IBS, it's uncomfortable. It's really causes a lot of disruption in your life. But gastritis could be dangerous. It really can because it can be acute or chronic, it could be erosive or non-erosive. And it's diagnosed through an endoscopy, but it can lead to ulcers and it can lead to even gastric cancer. One of the main causes of gastritis is H. pylori. It's an infection that targets the stomach. And in my opinion, people don't get tested for this enough. I mean, if you've got acid reflux, if you're burping, if you've got that weird feeling here, if you feel full soon after eating, and even other stuff, skin issues, because your anything in the GI tract is going to show on your skin for the most part. Eczema, psoriasis, all of that stuff. Um, and it's really, you have to test for these things and you have to really, um, especially the H. pylori, because again, that's a real hard one. And it's very common. I think it's 80% of the population have it to some degree. That's huge.
Oh,
That is huge. And it is passed on from person to person, which is kind of scary.
oh,
Um,
so you mean like
Oh.
through
contagious?
saliva,
Oh my. Okay. Okay.
bodily fluids. And so you would feel like a burning pain. And sometimes my clients that have had like raging H. pylori have no symptoms. It's very bizarre, but most people have acid reflux. That's
Okay.
the main thing. And you can test this through blood. Your doctor will do a blood test for it. Your GI doctor could do a breath test for it. Um, and your GI doctor would also do what's called a stool antigen test. But honestly, the best test for this is a stool, like a PCR stool test, because that looks for this H. pylori at the smallest possible level. So it doesn't show up in a lot of these tests unless it's after a certain mark. And again, then you already have it. You've already got damage from it. But looking in this PCR, like DNA test, it's going to find it so tiny that, you probably don't even have symptoms yet.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. And
What can, oh,
What
go ahead. I'm
treatment?
so,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
just going to
What
say,
can
what
somebody
treatment?
do about it?
the treatment, okay, depends on how high your levels are and how many are what called virulence factors you have. So there's like, I don't know, 7 different virulence factors. And if you have, the dangerous ones, then you would opt for probably the antibiotic treatment. It's a quadruple therapy. There's some PPIs in there and like 3 different antibiotics. It's rush. It's harsh. It's really harsh on the digestive tract. Another reason why you might opt for this is that it just depends, but for most people, 2 to 4 weeks to eradicate the H. pylori. You have to retest to make sure. And for natural antimicrobials, takes like 2 months. But it's not going to be anywhere near as harsh on the system. So it just depends because it's a rough couple of weeks on that antibiotic therapy. And it
Wow.
doesn't always work. I've had clients where it didn't, they went
Uh,
through all of that and it came back. It didn't work.
Can they take the probiotics while they're doing that therapy? Can those type of patients do
You
that?
can. You can. Yeah, you'd probably just take that Floromyces, the Florastor, Saccharomyces boulardii, so it wouldn't interfere with it. And then there's also a whole H. pylori diet with specific foods, broccoli sprouts. I love broccoli sprouts because, as I said, 80% of people have H. pylori, but also broccoli sprouts help with breast cancer prevention. So it's like a double whammy there. And they're good.
I don't even know if I've seen broccoli sprouts. I
Yeah,
mean, I know I've seen the other
yeah.
types of sprouts, but I'm not sure if I have.
You probably, find those in like mostly Whole Foods, health food stores, but they also come in capsules.
Oh,
There's
okay.
also like broccoli sprout supplement form.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, so yeah,
Yeah. That's
a
There's
big
so
amazing.
deal.
much to take in right now.
I
Yeah.
know. And that's why this kind of conversation can be because there's so many, as you're talking about it, there's so many other things
Right.
that, come into play here.
Right.
As far as a natural therapy, the like gold standard for H. pylori therapy is something called a mastic gum. It actually is a gum, but you don't take it in gum form. You take it in a supplement form. But that's been like the gold standard for forever. And that the broccoli sprouts, a couple of other antimicrobials that you rotate, but it works well. But you've always got to retest and make sure that H. pylori is eradicated and out of your system because it's a little bugger that likes to hang on. But the main thing I want people to get out of this is that, if you've got any of those symptoms, make sure that you get tested for it. And if your test comes up negative and you still have those symptoms, maybe think about doing this, it's called the GI map test. You can find it online. I do it in my practice. And you can get all kinds of information online about it too. But that's the test that I see really identifying it more than other tests.
And that's the test we talked about in the beginning of the
Yes.
conversation, right?
Yeah, because that test is going to look at the balance of the good and bad bacteria. It's going to look at your digestive function. It's going to look at all kinds of like parasites and pathogens and gross viruses and worms and gross stuff like that. But it's also going to look at H. pylori. And that's one of the main reasons I use it
Wow.
because that's a really important thing to um, find out that you have and take measures to get rid of it, whether you decide to go the antibiotic route or the supplement route. But I'll tell you, one of the frustrating things is that, if my client decides to go for the antibiotic, now I'm a nutritionist, I'm not a prescribing doctor. So they've got to take this test to their doctor, their GI, you know what I'm going to say, right? And the doctor's like, I'm not familiar with this test.
Yeah.
I'm not going to treat you with this. And so that's another thing that happens, which is unfortunate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And people are so desperate when they're in this situation because they can't function. They can't go to work. They can't live their lives, can't take their kids to school. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people realize how life limiting it becomes when you struggle with these chronic
Oh,
situations.
it really does. It's like, I mean, I can just say when I suffered with IBS for like 10 years, that was way back when, and no one knew anything about it. And it was like I never knew how a food was going to affect me. So if I went out with my friends for brunch, all of a sudden I'd be like, I have to go. It's like it's so life limiting. And but once you figure it out and you heal it, it's like a whole new world opens up.
Right. It's amazing because it's like you don't want to be in that pain again. That's a thing that you want to think about just in any kind of aspect. Do I want to feel that way again? Or can
Right.
I
Yeah.
avoid this? Yeah.
Yeah.
It-
And our digestion, because it happens automatically, we don't really think about it until
right.
something goes wrong. And then that's all we can think about,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
right?
Oh yeah. Anybody that's got to go to the bathroom quickly. That's the only thing on your
Oh
mind.
my
Yeah.
God. I
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
I
And that's,
know.
and that is like you said, with stress and anxiety, it just exacerbates it.
Right.
It exacerbates the whole thing. And this is really interesting. Did you know that there's hypnotherapy now for IBS?
Did not know that.
Didn't know that. Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. So, I have a colleague who's a really wonderful hypnotherapist, and she's a consultant for an app called Nerva, which literally is seeing like 93% improvement in IBS symptoms from for people that consistently use the app. I don't work for them.
Not sponsored.
I
You're
found
not
that
sponsored.
Yeah, I'm writing
fascinating.
that down. I'm writing that down.
It's yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think it's Nerva.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, like over 90% success rate. And
Wow.
so it's basically um you go on there, you become a member, I guess, and you listen to these recordings that help to just, rewire your brain so your nervous system can function more efficiently. And I just remember, when I was suffering from that, and I would just like intuitively, like kind of try to calm down and do deep breathing and things like this, and it would almost always help. So I could see that this could be really, the ticket for a lot of people.
Oh, that is great to know. I mean,
Yeah.
because there's situations, like if you're on a long flight or if you're in the car
Airplanes.
in the
Well,
middle of
I
anywhere,
could
you
list
could list them
right
all.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
Airplanes, bus rides, traffic,
Oh yeah.
school plays. Been there, done all of
Oh,
them.
Yeah,
it's
on
so
stage. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's almost like
Right.
instinctual when they say, "Okay, we're closing the gate," and you're like, "I now have to go to the bathroom."
It's so awful.
Yeah.
Another resource I wanted to give you is there's a website called Help for IBS.
Okay.
It's I find it really good. She gives you a whole list of like cheat foods, like cheat list, and then the whole list of the things to stay away from and what to have instead. She sells some really interesting teas, like fennel tea, which really helps to calm down the digestive tract. So
That
that's another good resource I've been using for years with my
Well,
clients.
we'll try to find those and put the links in the show notes. Jacqui,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This was personally, I thought it was very interesting. Hopefully, a lot of the listeners
I
will
think a lot of
also,
listeners will
yeah.
really benefit from this
Well, because
because
I anxiety in your gut, I think
Uh,
it wasn't until we got older that we realized how intertwined your brain and your gut are. You don't
well,
think of it, but like you said, with the vagus nerve, it's like a direct line.
yeah, it's like a highway. It's like a super
right.
highway.
It's
And
true.
what better example of mind-body connection is there? It's
Right. It's amazing. It
it's
is.
really amazing. So I hope that, people are inspired to push forward and really look for their root causes so that they can, get some relief from this and start living a better life.
Right.
Thank you. We'll
Free.
have your website also up for the people who
Oh,
want to
great.
take
Right.
information as well. So thank you, Jacqui. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed being with you guys today.
Oh,
This is